You are now listening to the Key Roger W. Jones Executive Leaders podcast series. Today's episode features Kimberly Walton. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for access to all of Key's online resources, including this podcast series.
So Kimberly, would you agree with me that today's landscape is very complicated to lead in?
So that may be an understatement. Just when I think as leaders, we're trying to figure out how to deal with the COVID-19, how to keep, our employees and the traveling public, from my perspective, safe and healthy, the social unrest really came front and center. I did not think silence was an option on that. So you're on the one hand trying to communicate in a different way, even though we've always had telework. It was always, my refrigerator is being delivered, I'm gonna work from home today, sort of telework.
Right.
Most people were still coming into the office with very long commutes, even though they were going short distances because of the traffic in DC. And then all of a sudden, everybody went home.
Yeah.
And were pretty much sheltered in place. So that was tough in and of itself. And then trying to care and feed for your employees in a sense, while you know that many of them were feeling very concerned about what was going on in society. So these have been really some very difficult times for all of us.
Has it changed the way that you lead in any way?
So yes, I think we have tended to, number one, over communicate. We consider it a compliment when someone says, you're over communicating, because we know that we have to do that in order to get the information out. The other thing that I think has become critical is making sure the management team, the leadership team, knows who their employees are. One of the very first things that came to my attention is that we have the new generation, younger generation of employees coming into the workforce. Many of them were living alone. Many of them, their social lives consisted of spending lots of time at Starbucks and lots of time at the fitness center and lots of time in restaurants. And all of a sudden that came to a screeching halt. And reaching out to them, because many people were at home with their families. While they may have wanted to get out of that environment and get a break from their families, they were not alone. And so it became really important. I spent a lot of time talking to my leadership team, making sure that they were thinking about the individual needs of each of their employees and listening to the various needs. I mean, I started doing town halls, and I intuitively said, I'll do the town hall at lunch, and it'll be a working lunch, until one of my employees said, doesn't work for me. I have elementary age kids at home with me, and their lunchtime is also my lunchtime. So I have to bow out of your town halls. And so immediately I'm like, okay, we'll do one at 10 in the morning. We'll do one at 2 in the afternoon, and maybe we'll do one late in the evening, so that we are accommodating a wide variety of our employees, and just asking them, are you doing okay? I have recently taken to just calling employees one-on-one, especially the ones that I would always see every day, because in order to get to my office, I would walk past their cube. And so I just called them, and they all have stories, and we've created venues where they could share if they've learned something new. What don't they like about teleworking? Because there's this assumption, life is good, you don't have to commute. That's not good for a lot of people, especially the extroverts. It's killing them being in a telework environment.
Do you think that, so all the things you described, do you see that as kind of the future of leadership? If you were kind of looking through your at an 8 ball and you said, this is probably going to stay with us? Is that kind of where you see it going?
So, I've always thought the future of leadership, we have many generations in the workforce now. And I don't think we've ever had to really deal with this many generations.
Mm-hmm.
And the workforce is more diverse than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And, many employees bring their whole selves to work, literally. And they want you to know. So I think the future of leadership has always been expanding. And it is really forcing the leadership gene. I think anyone who thinks they're trying to manage a workforce is missing the mark. You really have to actually go and dig deep and really lead people into your strategy and your plans, and make sure you know who your workforce is, and make sure that they're connected with each other. I have been really inspired and pleased with the fact that my workforce has figured out ways to stay connected. And they tell me of the different ways. There's a whole group that gets up early in the morning and competes against each other on their Peloton rides, and or they go to an open field to do their workouts 6 feet apart so that they stay connected. Yeah. And they've risen to the occasion of being in this environment. I have not seen any degradation in the quality or the quantity of work. And as a matter of fact, I would say it's the opposite. And we've been trying to encourage people. I know it's a staycation, but you do need to stop and take a breather and take a break.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's an amazing world right now. The other thing I wanted to ask you though was, there's a lot of really wonderful leaders out there. Is there anyone in particular that you kind of hold up? I'm sure you have more than one role model, but if you had to pick one, who would you say is your role model for leadership?
Oh my goodness, that is a really hard question, because it's probably a little bit of 3 or 4 people. I will say early in my career, I just got lucky. I just went from one great leader to another. But I did have early in my career, I don't have to say names, right?
No.
Okay. All right. So early in my career, I had a leader, and actually he was a political, who was much older than I was. But he was such an incredible teacher. He came to work to teach, and he relished people around him who were in a growth phase of their career, and was very, very good at pushing, almost pushing people off a cliff at times, yeah, so that they would grow. And but then running to the bottom so that he would catch them if they really couldn't handle it. And so in many ways that's always inspired me, because he was very just the whatever I know I'm willing to share with you and help you to move to the next level. So that was, I think, one, and it happened fairly early in my career. I was sort of at the 14, 15 level. And I eventually got his job. And I still remember the conversation that we had when he announced that he was going to take another political position. And the job he was in could be either political or career. And, so he announces this, and he says, and Kimberly will be acting when I leave. I've already talked to the assistant secretary, and she will be acting. And someone turned to me, because I was fairly young at the time, and said, "Oh, are you going to move in his office?" And at the time I had a nice office, right? I'm like, "Well, no, I'll just stay in my office." So the meeting is over, and he calls me. He says, "I need to see you in my office." And I walk in. He says, "You don't need to sit down. What you need to do is pack. I move out this evening. Tomorrow you move in, and you act like this is your office, period." Wow. And you paint the walls, you change the furniture, you have a strategy, you act like this is your office, so that at some point this will be your job. This will be your position. And so you don't have many leaders like that. And that was sort of early in my, as I was moving towards a senior executive. So
That's such great advice. When I was in the Navy, I was kind of at our Navy medical headquarters. I was a commander, and I had just gotten promoted to captain, but I'd gotten promoted on paper, but I hadn't put the rank on yet. And I had orders to go to the medical school on the faculty, and that was where I ultimately retired. And I was getting ready to execute the orders and leave, and I was still wearing commander. And someone gave me the same advice. They said, no, 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 no.
yeah.
You do not walk in those doors as a commander.
Yes.
Walk in as a captain. You stay here for another month, put on those Eagles, then you can go. Very similar, but it was great advice.
It was great. Yes. Great advice. Because that's exactly what I did. And that job became my entry into the senior executive service.
Fantastic. So, Kimberly, as you know, in our program, we do a lot with, emotional intelligence and mindfulness and meditation and things like that. And one of the things that we really try to instill early on with all of the folks that come to our program is this idea of really being comfortable with self. And that means kind of seeing ourselves for who we are and really almost more importantly, who we're not. It's a humility thing. And we ask our students early on in many of the programs to identify their biggest crucible. So Warren Bennis talked about these as being that one thing that happened to you in your career. We can have more than one, but it's typically a significant event that kind of shapes who we are. And usually it's that toughest moment. It's that challenge. When you think of a crucible in chemistry, it's that bowl that doesn't crack no matter how hot it gets. Was there a time in your career, a crucible moment for you where it just really defined who you became?
That's a great question. I actually think it happened early in my career too. I was really hard charging, very ambitious. I came to work, didn't necessarily appreciate that your workforce really wanted you to build a relationship with them. So at the same time, I have a very young child. I think he was still in daycare. So, I was burning the candle on all ends and trying to impress my leadership that I could do big things. And I did one of those 360s that were anonymous. It was a huge gift because they let me have it. I did ask those who I thought would tell me the truth. And I got the results. There was a professional that helped me understand the results. I think I went home and I put a bottle of wine down. A glass was not going to do it because I had really been told a thing or two. And it became the defining moment because I built an action plan to adjust how I was going to lead. And for a while there, I had to actually schedule it on my calendar because I knew I had to change my style, my default to be able to lead that organization. So I would have these little items on my calendar that said that I can't even remember. I used to have like a little secret word, and that all that meant was stop working and stop learning and start learning about your people. And for probably a couple of months, it was really uncomfortable for my workforce because I would show up in their offices or at their cubes and start talking about the weekend, which was just not something I would have ever done.
And they're like, who is this past woman?
Yeah, who is this strange person? Who is that picture, on your desk? Because I never would have asked before. And, I found out I had someone who danced on the weekends with a dance troupe in Philly. And I found out all kinds of things. But it really was, I think, a defining moment that made a change in that I've never gone back to. And so that practicing how to do something differently, and even though it was awkward to schedule it, and it was against my my normal work environment, I had to learn that just really, really working hard wasn't going to be enough in a leadership role to move the organization forward. So I think that was a very big defining moment. The second one, I have to say, I know you didn't ask me for two, but the other
Oh, I'm ready. I'm learning a lot. Let's hear it.
So I started my career as an attorney. And the beauty and the disadvantage is that almost everyone's like you. Everyone has the same credentials, right? They all have a bachelor's degree. They all have a law degree. They were all barred. They all were good writers because, law school teaches you how not to be afraid to write. They all had good verbal skills. So I thought being able to lead that group proved that I could lead. And then my next job, I stepped out of the legal profession. And there were maybe two people who had those credentials. Maybe half were older than me. One used to say, I had a master's degree before you were born. I had many who were still in school. Some had less education. There was just a large variety. And so that was another sort of defining point, realizing how to really lead a diverse team that had lots of different backgrounds. Some were former military, some had no military. That was another, I think, defining moment for me.
One of the things that I hear in your message is something that we try, and I just would love to have you speak to our students. We try to get them to understand the difference between content and context. And I always tell them, look, everybody's got content. We've got content. Brookings has content. Harvard's got content. We all got content. Content's no big deal. We all know where to go. It's all pretty much the same content. What matters is the context, and the context are those relationships that you're building within the cohort, and then you understand what that feels like. Actually becoming close and intimate with someone where you trust them and they trust you and you can be vulnerable. And then when you feel that in the cohort, then you can practice it in the workplace, because now you know what it feels like. It's not to be afraid of, but it isn't content. And so many of our leaders focus so much on content, and that's fine. We've had people in the past who backed out of our program because they were bench scientists at NIH. And they're like, you know what? I don't even like people. I just like my agar plates and my microscopes. We need them too, but we don't want them in charge of people.
Yes,
right? Exactly. So,
exactly.
but no, it sounds so much like a context argument, and that's just so important. It's just refreshing to hear that whenever I hear it from someone like yourself. That's neat.
Thanks.
So it's just been nice talking to you. I know we've got a lot coming up with this, the photographer, and I got to tell you, I'm so proud. I shouldn't say I'm proud of. I'm not in a position to be proud of anybody, but I'm honored to be a part of this team, because it's been Bree and Lamont and Jennifer that in lieu of a live version, in lieu of a live event this year, they created this entire experience with the interviews and the photographer, and it's just been terrific. It's almost like we've been celebrating more online than we ever do when we just say show up in November at the party.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Everything is more meaningful right now.
It seems to be, doesn't it? It really does. And I know we're really looking forward to the event in November, and we're hoping maybe next year. We've got some students in our program from the CDC, and one of them told me, they said, you know what, probably next summer is when we'll really start to see some success. And so maybe with our fingers crossed, we can do a Roger Jones next year in person, and we can have you all there as well.
Okay, that would be great.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yes, that would be great.
That would be awesome.